like to get started with the program. So I know many of you here, many of you I don't. I am Dr. Steven Lome. I'm a cardiologist here at Rush Copley, board certified. I've been in practice for about 10 years or so. And one of my passions is what we call lifestyle medicine, helping people avoid pills and procedures. And it really is a super powerful thing. And so what I'd like to share with you today at this presentation, considering it's January, and a lot of people in January has that New Year's resolution of wanting to lose weight and get fit and focus on their health, I'm going to share with you how not to diet. And there's a couple reasons why this is the title of the presentation. Reason number one is, as you know, there are many diets and fads and all these misconceptions about nutrition and lifestyle and weight loss that are out there. And being on a diet is, in general, the D word's a bad word in general, right? You don't want to be on a temporary diet. You want long-term health, and so it's super important to focus on doing healthy things for long-term good health to maintain your ideal body weight long-term instead of just looking for short, easy, quick fixes. So how not to diet. The second reason this title is there is because there's a wonderful book that I'd recommend everybody here read if you haven't, and it's called How Not to Die, without the T, How Not to Die, written by Dr. Michael Greger. I'll show it in a few slides later. But I'd like to begin the presentation on a little bit of a personal note. This was me about 4 years ago, 100 pounds heavier, following what we call the standard American diet. I was well on my way to the standard American diseases: heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, stroke, one of the diet and lifestyle related cancers, and the standard American death. And I was getting short of breath, walking up a flight of stairs, multiple obesity-related medical issues. I knew at that point in my life, at the age of 36, that I had to make a change for myself. I couldn't play with the kids. I was having a lot of problems, a lot of just horrible issues. And at the same time, in my clinical practice, I was getting frustrated because I trained at a major academic medical center, and I knew all the right pills to give people. I knew all the surgeries and the procedures that patients needed to have. Good, what we call evidence-based medicine, based on guidelines from the American Heart Association, the American College of Cardiology. But I was noticing pretty quick in my clinical practice, people don't like the pills, they cost money, they have side effects. And even if I give my patients all the right pills, guess what? They might still have a heart attack or stroke. They might need a bypass surgery or a stent in their coronary artery because the pills don't treat the cause of the person's underlying condition, the cause of which is diet and lifestyle related factors in 86% of what we see in our current healthcare system. 86% of our diseases that we see as doctors are diet and lifestyle related. So why would it be treated best with pills and procedures? It should be treated best with diet and lifestyle. But I wasn't seeing that early on in my practice until I was running into my own issues and trying to recapture my own health. So I made the same mistakes so many Americans make. The first mistake I made was thinking exercise was the key, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Exercise is not the key. It helps a little bit. But I went out and I said, okay, I'm going to sign up for a marathon. Right? Marathon runners are thin. And I'm 265 pounds. I'm going to run a marathon. How smart is that? And then I did the other mistake that most people made. I read the USDA dietary guidelines 3 times over, thinking that this is what the government is telling us, and the government's not going to lie to us, right? It's got to be the truth. And so I did things like eating chicken and fish, low-fat dairy products, and used olive oil all over my food. And I ate unhealthy foods like burgers, fries, hot dogs, and desserts in moderation. You know, only once a week, maybe a couple times a week. My birthday, a holiday, this person's birthday, that event, this event, it piles up pretty quick, doesn't it? So I ate unhealthy foods in moderation. After 2 years and 2 marathons and trying what I thought doing pretty well with my diet, I lost 40 pounds. And I said, hey, that's 40 pounds, that's great that I lost that, but I have 60 more pounds to go. What's wrong? Are you telling me that I have to do this 5 years in a row, run 5 marathons and do this 5 years in a row in order to lose 100 pounds and get down to my ideal body weight, which was my goal? Something is missing. And that's when Netflix randomly said I should watch a documentary called Forks Over Knives. If nobody's watched this, super powerful documentary. And it said things like, chicken is the #1 source of cholesterol in the American diet. Olive oil is pure fat, the most calorie-dense food in the entire human diet. Oil is not healthy for you. And milk is baby growth food for cows. And if you're not a cow and you don't want to grow, please don't drink it. And these concepts were completely different than what I was reading in the USDA dietary guidelines. It's not completely different than what I was taught, though, in medical training about nutrition. You know why? I had zero medical training in nutrition. Not a single lecture. Not a lecture on how to help somebody lose weight or anything about evidence-based nutrition. I had my nutrition information from the same place almost every single doctor gets theirs from. The media, newspapers, and just reading blog articles all over the place, which is not the right place to get it. We really need good evidence-based nutrition education as physicians. And so I watched Forks Over Knives, and without a change in my exercise, I lost 60 pounds in 6 months and reached my ideal body weight. Subsequently, as I grew up on the standard American diet, my parents were reaching 300 pounds each. My sister was 450 pounds in high school. My parents both have lost 100 pounds, reversed their diabetes and hypertension and high cholesterol. My sister has lost 300 pounds. All of us the exact same way, which I'm going to share with you here today. And what we're going to do is talk about the current state of healthcare in the United States, do a crash course on nutrition, do some obesity, weight loss concepts, and then talk about kind of the how to do it. So these are the 4 things that we're going to talk about. And I think it's super important to cover this first topic, is the current state of healthcare in the United States. A lot of people get it, that we kind of have a screwed up system, but to what degree? It's very important to understand that the way our system is set up has led to our obesity and diabetes and heart disease crisis. It's not the fault of the individual person. Heart disease, I'm going to tell you, is the #1 cause of death in America and has been for 100 years in a row since 1918. Just about as many people died last year from heart disease as the number of American soldiers that died in combat in all wars in American history combined ever. Just 1 year of heart disease deaths, despite heart disease being nearly 100% preventable. And if you look at, in perspective, war, deaths from pregnancy and birth, deaths from murder, deaths from suicide, deaths from diabetes, compared to heart disease and cancers, which are probably at least 70 to 80% preventable through diet and lifestyle changes. That's the perspective as the impact that heart disease has in regards to how many people suffer and die from it. Despite being nearly 100% preventable and even reversible when somebody has it, just blows my mind away to think if some other country was killing 600,000 Americans every single year, just picking them off, shooting them, would we let that happen? No way. We would go to war with them. We would not let that happen. Why do we let so many people die from preventable diseases in the United States? And there's 2 words that explains why we do that. Culture and money. The American culture is not into healthy eating, not into exercising. It is not, in general, health focused at all. And in regards to money, there's simply no money in healthy people. We have a multi-trillion-dollar food system, a multi-trillion-dollar healthcare system, and a multi-trillion-dollar pharmaceutical industry, which would make no money from healthy people. And that's just the reality of our system, because really, we live in a capitalistic society. If you said, let's develop a healthcare system that's based on money only and profit only, here are the rules. There's no money in healthy people. Let's not prevent any disease at all. There's no money in dead people. Don't let anybody die because you can't make money off of dead people. Let's keep people alive, taking multiple pills, needing multiple tests and surgeries, and seeing their doctor all the time. And that's the way the system would be set up. So that's what ends up happening. So the United States Medicare spending has gone way up. We're going to be broke in 2026 in Medicare. In the United States, per person, we spend almost triple what the UK spends per person. We spend so much money. As a percentage of our gross domestic product, we tower over all the other industrialized nations. Almost 20% of the economy in America is healthcare spending. And you would think with all this money that we're spending, we have to be a healthy country, right? Actually, we're at the bottom of life expectancy, the dead last in regards to how long we're going to be living. My kids' generation is going to be the first generation of children that have shorter lives than their parents. And it's not because of the lack of a medical advancement or new pills or surgical procedures. It's because of the horrific diet and lifestyle and food system we have in America and the lack of focus of our healthcare system on prevention through diet and lifestyle means. That's it. That's the reality of our system. So I tell people who are overweight, obese, who are looking to lose weight, or diabetic, they had a heart attack, they're trying to recapture their health. It's so important for those people to realize that being unhealthy is not your fault. being overweight, being diabetic, having heart disease is not your fault. It is a trap that we've all fallen into. Because I think about that about myself. When I was 100 pounds heavier, my parents, my sister, was it really my fault that I became unhealthy that way? I don't think so. I think there's 5 things that have led to our current issue. Number 1 is human instincts, of course. That's not our fault that we love sugar, salt, and fat, right? There's something called the motivational triad where we like to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and conserve energy. And what more pleasure seeking is there other than sugar, salt, and fat and eating unhealthy foods? Avoiding pain, conserving energy is sitting down and watching TV, right? So you're not exercising. If you're exercising, you're not conserving energy. And if you exercise too much, you can hurt yourself. So it is a natural human tendency to seek pleasure through unhealthy foods, to avoid pain, conserve energy, and that is not the individual person's fault, right? The second factor is our culture. From the day you turn 1, you get a birthday cake put in front of you and you smash it up and you're addicted to sugar, right? That happened to me. Halloween candy was breakfast, lunch, and dinner for me for a week after Halloween. That's the way our culture is. Every holiday, it's always unhealthy food. It's always high-fat, animal-based foods, processed foods, sugary desserts. That's our culture. Is that my fault that I was born into that culture and taught this and conditioned that eating processed food, eating animal-based foods was okay? Is that my fault? I don't think so. Is that the individual person's fault? No. Our food industry does not feed us healthy food. They market to us. They brainwash us that beef is what's for dinner, that the incredible edible egg, milk does a body good, and the sugar advertisements, the pizza advertisements on TV. And then what is it followed by, of course? Advertisements for the pills to treat the diseases that the food caused that they just marketed to you and got you to eat. So our food industry, though, they fund research to confuse people as to what's healthy and what's not, no different than the tobacco industry and what they used to do. And so all the food industry's gimmicks, not the individual person's fault, right? Our government policy subsidizes sugar. They subsidizes corn and soy to feed livestock. Where are the subsidies for apples? An apple a day keeps the doctor away, right? There's no subsidies for those. Beans, good for your heart. The only beans that are subsidized are soybeans to feed the livestock, not the beans that we should be eating. We should be giving beans away for free to Americans. That would help solve our healthcare crisis. The USDA food pyramids, the My Plates, have improved dramatically over the years, and they do have a lot of good positive statements, which I'll share with you. However, they need stronger stances on predominantly or exclusively plant-based diets. So those types of things, those government policies, not the individual person's fault. And then our healthcare system, as I said, doesn't focus on prevention. When I went to the doctor, was never told that I needed to lose weight as a child, even though I clearly did. I had horrible abdominal issues, and so I had multiple x-rays and stuff. Was never told all I had to do was ditch dairy and it would all go away because I was lactose intolerant. And I went through years of suffering and tests, and not one person said ditch dairy because of our preconditioning and our USDA dietary guidelines, and everybody thinking, oh, we must be cows, we need to drink cow's milk to get calcium. No, there's other places to get it from. But this is why America is so sick. So we need to change our system so that the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and our healthcare system start profiting from prevention of disease and stop profiting from illnesses of good, hardworking American people. That's really not, so it's not the individual person's fault. And understanding this is critical because it helps people take the blinders off so that you see, yes, this is a trap all Americans are in, and some people fall into it more than others, but it's not the individual person's fault. It truly isn't. So culture and money over health is what we've chosen. And it's something that we need to change. We need to be the change, not just you individually who are looking to get healthier, but us as a healthcare system need to stop these unhealthy foods in our culture, and we need to change our healthcare system and our industry so that they can do things the right way. So now I'm going to tell you I lied to you straight out. When I told you earlier heart disease is the #1 cause of death in America, that's not true. It's the American diet. According to the Global Burden of Disease study funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the #1 cause of premature death in America and the #1 cause of premature disability in America are dietary risks for death and for disability. So we need to stop saying heart disease is the #1 killer and cancer is the #2 killer. We need to start saying the American diet is the #1 killer in America, so that way we could focus on changing the American diet to prevent people from suffering and dying from all these preventable chronic diseases that we have. So starting now to go through some obesity and weight loss concepts. For people, the topic today is how not to diet, how to maintain a healthy weight. So it's really important to figure out some basic concepts and how to get from the left all the way to the right down to ideal body weight. So I'd like to preface this next section, though, by stating I do not advocate anybody sitting there counting calories and calculating metabolic rates and all this crazy stuff. But understanding some of these concepts are important as a baseline, just so you can get the gist as to why it is that we recommend what we actually do recommend. So it's important to know what body mass index is. It's a ratio of your height to your weight. And obese is greater than 30. Morbidly obese is greater than 35. Being overweight is between 25 and 29. A healthy weight is between 18.5 and 24.9. And underweight is less than 18.5. Do you know what percentage of Americans are at a healthy body mass index? It is now under 20%, meaning 80% or just more of adult Americans are overweight or obese. 80% or more, a huge number. So if you could easily find one of these charts to calculate your own body mass index, I am 6 foot tall and I am 6'1" and 175 pounds. So if I just went over, I can look and see my body mass index is right around the 23 mark or so. So right at my ideal body weight. So there's different ways. We don't have to go through these calculations. You don't need to worry about it, but just some simple examples of somebody who weighed 180 pounds. All three of these people weigh 180 pounds. But one is 6 foot tall and another is 5 foot tall, right? And so keeping the weight constant, the height does play a role in your body mass index. Similarly, if somebody has the same height, all these people are 5'6", but if you're heavier, your body mass index is going to go up. So simple way of thinking about body mass index. The next thing to know is ideal body weight. And honestly, this should be everybody's goal, is to reach their ideal body weight. And a lot of people say, that's crazy. That's too thin. I can't get to that weight. Oh, I'm going to look sick if I get to that weight. There's no way. I used to weigh that much in high school. Never going to happen again. I hear this all the time. You can reach your ideal body weight. It doesn't matter what your bony structure is. Some people say, oh, I'm stockier set, I have big bones. Okay, fine. Add 3 pounds to your ideal body weight. Get 3 pounds above your body weight because your bones aren't going to weigh any more than that. So ideal body weight for a 6 foot tall man is actually 170 pounds. And then you add 5 pounds per inch above or below that. And for a woman, it's for a 6 foot tall woman, it's 160 pounds less. So basically for a 5 foot tall woman, it's 100 pounds, and you add 5 pounds for that. So if you have somebody, a 5'6" lady, you say your ideal weight is 130 pounds. And again, culturally, we think, oh my gosh, that's thin. That's crazy thin. But that's healthy. And the science actually shows even maybe being slightly thinner than your ideal body weight is even more healthy for you in regards to heart disease risk and cancer prevention risk. So yes, if you're at your ideal body weight, you're not going to be bench pressing 300 pounds and be ripped with a bunch of muscles. And yeah, it's not a perfect measure, because some people can be more muscular, and that throws off the body mass index. Think of Arnold Schwarzenegger, huge guy at his prime with these ripped muscles and the six-pack abs. He was morbidly obese because of how much muscle he had, right? Having that extra muscle doesn't necessarily mean you're healthy, though. It doesn't necessarily mean that. So being at your ideal body weight is super important. There's a Dr. Joel Fuhrman who strongly advocates even being slightly less than your ideal body weight. But only 3% of America is at their ideal body weight. And guess what? 1% of that are critically ill patients, such as cancer patients on chemotherapy. 1% of that is elite athletes. That means only 1% of American is at their ideal body weight because they're trying to simply be healthy. Isn't that crazy? Where that's really what our goal needs to be. The science is very clear that ideal, the blue zones, which we'll talk about, we're all at their ideal body weight. One other basic concept to understand when we're talking about calories and weight loss is what's called the basal metabolic rate. If you sat down and you watched TV all day for 24 hours, you're still going to burn some calories off, right? So it's the amount of calories that you burn, even if you're doing nothing. And it depends on your height and weight and age and gender a little bit. And there's different calculations. You can go out there and figure out what your basal metabolic rate is. Don't really worry about it. You don't need to do your own calculation. Actually, the best way to do it is metabolic testing, where you sit there and they measure your gas exchanges and such. But you're going to burn so many calories off every day, even if you did nothing. You're going to burn more off if you stay physically active, and that's obvious. Then everybody always has this concept of, oh, you need to eat fewer calories than what you burn off, and then you will actually lose weight. So calories in, calories out, that type of thing, right? Well, okay, yeah, fine. But it's not completely 100% accurate. It's close. But that's not really what, again, we don't want to focus on calculations and measuring things. That's just not sustainable long term, to be counting calories and stuff for the rest of your life. And then I wanted to put one note in here on body fat percentage, because again, somebody can be very muscular and still technically be in the overweight category, but if their body fat percentage is super low, and you could there's many different ways to measure it, pinch test, there's scales, there's lots of different ways. It's another measure that if you really wanted to check it every once in a while and get into these, what we call biometrics, sure, go for it. But don't worry about too much detail about these things. And then calories, the dreaded calories, counting calories. Well, I'm going to give you a little preview and some great news of what our recommendations and the final recommendations as to what the American College of Lifestyle Medicine advocates in regards to what you guys should be eating. You don't have to count any calories ever. Never count calories. We're focusing on food groups and such. Counting calories, again, is not something that long-term is sustainable for people to do. You just, for the rest of your life, you're going to sit there and track your calories? Come on, it's not going to happen. So a calorie is actually an energy. It's a unit of energy. And scientifically, it's how much energy it takes to raise 1 kilogram of water 1 degree Celsius. So basically, it's just a measurement of energy, right? And if you exercise, you burn off calories, et cetera, et cetera. So calories are, again, don't count them, but understand these concepts. Calorie density is an extraordinarily important concept that you all must know and understand. And calorie density, I could talk for an hour on calorie density. And there are actually some great talks by Jeff Novick. He's a registered dietitian on YouTube. And Dr. Albert Lim, he's got a great YouTube video that goes all over a whole hour of just calorie density. But if you look at this is 5 different stomachs, all with 400 calories in them. So all these stomachs have 400 calories. On the left, you see oil. 400 calories of oil barely fills up your stomach, does not make you feel full, despite giving you all these calories. Cheese, 400 calories of cheese. Meat, barely, not even half your stomach is full, 400 calories of meat. Starchy vegetables like potatoes, rice, and beans, 400 calories is about a little more than halfway full. Fruits and vegetables, you can stuff your face full of fruits and vegetables and you only get 400 calories. Because plant-based foods have fiber in them. Fiber has 0 calories in it and it fills you up. Animal-based foods have 0 fiber. The most calorie-dense food in the entire human diet is oil, which is pure fat. And so this graph goes over it very well. This is a summary of different foods and their calorie densities that they have. All the way on the right, we see oil and fat coming in at 4,000 calories per pound. Now, we measure this in calories per pound. A lot of people don't really think about eating their food, like how many pounds of food you eat every day, but the average human eats between 3 and 5 pounds of food every day, 3 and 5 pounds. So if you say about 4 pounds of food is what most people are going to eat if you add it all up. Well, oil is 4,000 calories per pound, and some people say, I'm never going to eat a pound of oil, but guess what? Americans do eat pounds of oil. It adds up quite a bit. It's heavy, and if you add up how much oil is added to every single thing, it ends up being so many calories you wouldn't believe it. Butter is 2,800 calories, and the same as butter is nuts and seeds. Sugar, pure sugar, is 1,800 calories per pound, and cheese is 1,600 calories per pound. The bad carbohydrates, the white flour, white bread, white rice, etc., refined carbohydrates average 1,400 calories per pound, but the unrefined brown rice, whole rolled oats, those only 500 calories per pound. And I'm going to break this down a little bit more for you later. Fatty proteins, beef, sausage, pork, you add them all together and average them, it's 1,000 calories per pound versus legumes, beans, lentils, only 600 calories per pound. Vegetables, 100 calories per pound. Fruits, 200 calories per pound. And an average of whole plant foods is 500 calories per pound. So again, I don't want you counting calories, but this is a summary of the calorie density of different food groups. Now, Going back to that 4 pounds of food per day that most people eat. If you wanted to keep your calories to about 2,000 calories per day, and again, everybody's different, 4 pounds of food times 500 calories per pound would be 2,000 calories per day if you followed that math. 4 pounds of food times 500 calories per pound would be 2,000 calories per day. So you want to try to average your calorie density around 500 calories per pound, which is exactly where whole plant foods average in. The second you go on this side with refined carbohydrates, sugar, animal-based foods, the fatty proteins, the cheese, butter, oils, and fats, you're going to be more than 500 calories per pound. And this is one of the main reasons why we do limit quite a bit nuts and seeds. While they can be healthy for you in certain instances, in small quantities, don't go nuts on the nuts, right? So in small quantities, it can be good for you. Their calorie density is huge. It's huge. So breaking this down a little bit more, though, going into the fatty proteins, let's look at this. Bacon is 2,400 calories per pound. Short ribs, 2,100. Sausage, 1,500. Steak, 1,200. Ham, 1,100. Chicken wings, 921. Even salmon, which we'll get to. Everybody thinks salmon is a health food. It's 920 calories per pound. Not to mention cholesterol, saturated fat, mercury, PCBs, all these other contaminants and stuff that are in there. But it's still not even a good weight loss food. Look at its calorie density. Tuna is high. Eggs is 630. Number one source of cholesterol in the American diet goes back and forth between chicken and the eggs, right? Boneless, skinless chicken breast. Everybody thinks it's super healthy for you. And it does come in at 500 calories per pound. So for weight loss, technically, some boneless, skinless chicken breast could be all right based on its calorie density. However, we want to lose weight in a healthy way, long term, and if cholesterol is the number, or if chicken is the number one or number two source of dietary cholesterol, we don't want to be pounding the chicken. And I tried that once. Let me tell you, my cholesterol numbers went up, and it caused a lot of constipation. So it's not really a good thing to pound after breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I was getting the Foreman grill out, squeezing the boneless, skinless chicken breast, watching the fat come out, and it was 3 times a day. And oh boy, not so good. And what about tofu? Tofu is technically a fatty protein. It's got a lot of fat in it too, but still only 344 calories per pound. So in regards to beans now, look at the plant-based protein source. These are free of dietary cholesterol, essentially free of saturated fat. Unlike the animal-based protein sources, these are high in fiber. There are 0 fibered animal-based foods. If you look at pinto beans, they're only 100 calories per pound. And again, there's the tofu. Now, split peas and lentils are around 500, kidney beans a little bit more, and black beans. Soybeans are higher because they are higher in fat. And that's why certain doctors, like Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, who tries reverse heart disease on an extremely low-fat diet, he excludes all soy products from his diet, although bean Ornish does not. And tempeh, which is kind of a fermented, slightly processed soybean, is higher in calorie density. But still, compared to the animal-based protein sources, way, way lower. Not only lower, but no cholesterol, almost no saturated fat, and high in fiber. Fish. Let's break down fish. Again, we're keeping apart the fact that fish has cholesterol, saturated fat, mercury, and PCBs. Just looking at the calorie density, mackerel comes at 1,380 calories per pound. Again, the salmon is still 900, tuna is 800. Flounder, catfish, and Atlantic cod are the only ones that come in halfway decent in regards to their calorie density. There's much less fat in those fish. But again, you still get all those contaminants and such in them. Now look at different types of oil. I heard some people say, no oil? What do you mean no oil? I thought canola oil was better for you. I thought olive oil was better for you. Oil is oil. It's all pure fat. If you look at how many calories in a corn oil, which is your canola oil, 4,082 calories per pound. Soybean oil, sesame oil, palm oil, peanut oil, sunflower oil, olive oil, all just over 4,000 calories per pound. Coconut oil, which is extremely high in saturated fat, is way up there. Safflower oil, not as bad. But still, oil is oil. It's very, very, very high in calories. Now let's look at fruits. So strawberry is 150 calories per pound. Peaches, 177. Oranges, 213. Apples. Is anybody diabetic and been to a diabetic counselor and been told not to eat apples because of the sugar? Come on. 237 calories per pound. Fruit of any kind, except for 2 exceptions, which we'll get to, will promote weight loss. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Does anybody here know somebody who's overweight or obese from eating too many apples? That doesn't happen, right? So pears, bananas, jackfruit, which actually they use it as a meat substitute in many plant-based diet models. You could use pulled pork, jackfruit, barbecue sandwiches. There's so many different things you can do with it. But this is important to see, avocado being a fruit and coconut being a fruit. Look at the calorie density of these foods. Avocado, I know people love it. Got to be careful, not too much. Just like the nuts and seeds, it's pretty calorie dense. And coconut, extraordinarily calorie dense, not to mention one of the predominant plant sources of saturated fat. So avoiding coconut is actually not a bad idea, only very, very small amounts because of the calorie density and the saturated fat. Now looking at different vegetables, lettuce is only 68 calories per pound. So Dr. Joel Fuhrman, who wrote the book Eat to Live, he tells people, eat a huge salad every single day, preferably 2 huge salads every single day. It's going to be high in fiber, very low in calorie density, will fill you up without giving you any major calories. So celery, very low, tomatoes, green peppers, mushrooms, spinach, broccoli, all these are still under 200 calories per pound. Kale, 222, squash, potatoes, corn, starchy vegetables. Potatoes still come in at 349 calories per pound. Wait a second. I thought potatoes were unhealthy for you. Everybody gives potatoes such a bad rap. Why is that? It's because of the fat that accompanies the potatoes, right? French fries is the #1 potato source in the American diet. Half of the calories in French fries is oil. And then people put cheese, butter, sour cream, and bacon all over their potatoes. But you know what? You ever hear this guy? Penn Jillette is his name, magician, comedian, Penn and Teller show. Carbohydrates, such as in potatoes. Everybody thinks they have carbs. Oh, carbs are bad, carbs are bad, carbs are bad. Carbs are not bad. Healthy carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, are not bad for you. And that misconception needs to be thrown out of everybody's brain in this room if you have that misconception. All the longest living cultures ever described anywhere, ever, were all high carbohydrate diets from healthy carbohydrate sources. So Penn Jillette weighed 330 pounds, and he wrote a book called Presto, How I Made 100 Pounds Disappear. And it's kind of vulgar, so not for kids, but his book is entertaining. And you know how he kick-started, not that I'm recommending anybody here do this, do you know how he kick-started his weight loss? Eating nothing but potatoes. Nothing but potatoes for 3 weeks, and he lost 30 pounds in 3 weeks. But the potatoes couldn't have oil, sour cream, butter, not even pepper. He put nothing on them. He just cooked them and ate potatoes and only potatoes. Lost 30 pounds in 3 weeks. Some of that's probably water weight. But still, the point is if it doesn't have oil, sugar, butter on it, even potatoes, starchy vegetables are extraordinarily healthy for you. Complex carbohydrates are healthy for you. And you could be fine eating these foods as long as you do it the right way. So here's his before and his after picture. Very dramatic difference. So he's a huge advocate of 100% plant-based diet now. He speaks all about it, and his book is very entertaining. So one of the reasons why it's important to know this, that carbohydrates are not bad for you, one of the scientific concepts that understands this, is a big medical term. We call it de novo lipogenesis. De novo meaning happening in its natural place in the body. Lipo means fat, and genesis means making new. So making new fat in your body. So how do you make new fat in your body? Well, it's hard to do this. Your body doesn't do it that much. It doesn't want to make new fat if it doesn't have to. It takes a lot of energy. So if you overconsume carbohydrates, especially things like refined carbohydrates and sugars, soda drinks, if people drink a whole bunch of soda, a whole bunch of juice, all that stuff, you're pounding your liver with all this rapid absorption of sugar. You absorb it super quick. Then what ends up happening? Your liver says, I have to do something with this energy, something with this sugar, so it will start making new fat if you don't store it in what we call your glycogen stores in your muscles. Your body, the primary fuel source for your body are carbohydrates. So it tries to use the carbohydrates that you consume, and then it tries to store them as glycogen. And if it can't, because you overconsumed carbohydrates and you were physically inactive, not burning them off, yes, you could take sugar and the bad carbohydrates and turn them into fat, de novo lipogenesis. However, doing so requires about 30 to 35% of the energy of that sugar, of that carbohydrate, meaning that if you eat way too many apples and you're a couch potato, or I should say way too many potatoes and you're a couch potato, then you could technically take some of that potato calories, those complex carbohydrates, and convert it to fat, but at the expense of 1/3 of the energy of that potato. So you eat 100 calories of potato, you could only turn that into 67 calories of fat, because it requires so much energy to take a carbohydrate and chemically change it into a fat. Whereas when you eat fat, you don't need to do any chemical conversion to store it. When you eat fat like this, you just take the fat and boom, it goes into your fat tissues. So they've actually done these studies where they've radio-labeled, they've put radioactive markers on fat, different types of fat, have people eat it, and then scan their body to see where the heck is the fat. They do biopsies in different places and try to see where did the fat go that they ate. And guess what? Boom, it just gets stored right away. So that led to the statement of Dr. John McDougall, from your lips to your hips, the fat you eat is the fat you wear. So again, if you eat fat, oil, animal fat, whatever, your body just takes it in and says, oh, I don't need to use this for energy. I use carbohydrates for energy, and you know what? I've been a little sedentary anyways. I'm just going to take this fat and I'm going to store it. So the fat you eat is the fat you wear from your lips to your hips. That's why you do want a low-fat diet. So some people say, oh, but the low-fat diet craze failed, right? We've been advocating low-fat diet since the 1970s, since the late 70s, and America's more obese and more overweight. Well, you can clearly find to USDA statistics that we never really truly decreased our fat intake. It went up, and we increased our refined carbohydrate and sugar intake too, and our overall calorie intake went up, and that's why we have overweight, obesity, diabetes, and all these things. Not because the low-fat diet craze didn't work. The science clearly shows low-fat is correct in the absence of oils, in the absence of processed carbohydrates and sugars. So the fat you eat is the fat you wear from your lips to your hips. Now, again, never count calories, but the point I wanted to make of this is when people look at the donut, they say, oh, it's the carbs in that donut that made you fat, right? Bad carbs, bad carbs, bad carbs. And yes, that's probably a white flour carb that's in there, which is a bad type of carbohydrate in the donut. But if you look at this, fat is 47%. The donut is 47% fat from all the vegetable shortening, from all the oil that's put in the donut. And so even the white flour refined carbohydrate isn't anywhere near as bad for you as the fat that's in that donut. So people think when you gain weight from eating too many donuts, which by the way, I used to be able to do a dozen Krispy Kremes in a day. Oh my gosh, yeah. So anyways, don't do that anymore. But you don't get fat from the carbohydrates that are in there. Even though the refined carbohydrates are not really good for you, and yeah, if you eat a dozen of them and you're sedentary, maybe you'll get a little Novo Lipogenesis, but not that much. It's from all the fat that's in there. And you just store it as fat. So important concept to understand. So here's what you need to think about for nutrition. There are only three main food groups. Processed foods, which includes the bad carbohydrates, and oil, again, which is highly processed and very calorie dense. Animal-based foods, and whole plant foods. All nutrition that you ever read anywhere, throw it out the door, this is all you need to know. Three categories of food. Processed foods, that's not real food. Animal-based foods, whole plant foods. Processed foods should be 0, not in moderation. Should be 0. Animal-based foods, according to the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, should be 0. So what are you left with? A 100% whole food, plant-based diet with more than 100,000 edible species. That's what the recommendation is. Now, does everybody need, for health-related reasons, to be on a 100% whole food, plant-based diet? Probably not. The blue zones were averaging 95% of calories from whole plant foods, which means they were having 1 or 2 servings of animal-based foods, maybe 3 servings a week. And they were doing it from the day they were born. However, the foundation for heart disease and cardiovascular disease and metabolic syndrome, it starts when you're young. And if you haven't been consuming 95% of your calories from unprocessed plant-based foods like those blue zones were, if you haven't been doing that from the day you were born, 95% is just not going to be enough for your health, and thus the recommendation of 100% of calories from whole, unprocessed, plant-based food. So it makes us stop and think, why do we eat animal-based foods at all? If they're full of cholesterol and saturated fat and antibiotics and growth hormones, and they increase insulin-like growth factor 1 levels, which can cause cancer. The only reasons we eat animal-based foods is because of convenience, a habit, culture, and taste, not for nutrients, which we're gonna get to. So dietary cholesterol comes only in animal-based foods because your liver makes you all the cholesterol you need. You don't need to eat any dietary cholesterol. Any dietary cholesterol is bad cholesterol. The liver of a cow makes cholesterol, liver of a pig, a chicken, a turkey, a fish, yes, fish have livers, makes cholesterol. So eggs and dairy products, anything that comes from an animal will have cholesterol in it. Simple way to remember that. Anything that comes from a plant will have 0 cholesterol because an apple doesn't have a liver. You can remember it that way, that plants will not have any dietary cholesterol in them, but they're high in fiber, and they have almost no saturated fat too, which we'll get to. So look at how much cholesterol is in certain plant-based foods. Egg yolk, extremely high, even one egg per 100 grams, which is more than one egg, has a lot of dietary cholesterol in it. Lobster, extremely high. Of course, butter is extremely high, but look at the plant-based foods, essentially 0. Even skim milk has some cholesterol in it. Should we eat any cholesterol? According to the USDA dietary guidelines, again, they did get a few things right. They say individuals should eat as little dietary cholesterol as possible while consuming a healthy eating pattern. As little as possible is 0, right? It's 0, so eat 0. Should we eat any saturated fat? Well, 95% of saturated fat comes from animal-based foods. Only 5% of our diet comes from plant-based foods. And so similarly, if you look at where saturated fat is, butter is very high. Cheese is the #1 source of saturated fat in the American diet. America has a cheese addiction. I'm still convinced cheese is the reason I have a job. Yet here is the plant-based foods, almost no saturated fat. And look at coconut oil and palm oil, crazy high in saturated fat, crazy high. So again, we don't need any saturated fat in our diet. And so is there any amount that's okay to eat of dietary cholesterol? Any animal-based food that you could eat? Is there any saturated fat you could eat? According to very, very well-controlled, what we call metabolic ward studies, where they lock people up. We can't do this nowadays, but they've done them before. Lock people up for a month or two and control everything that they eat and measure different parameters, their blood cholesterol levels and such. They have solid science that concludes that there is no upper limit that we can give for trans fatty acids, which is a different type of fat, saturated fat, or cholesterol. There's no upper limit because any intake, any amount that you eat above 0% will increase your LDL bad cholesterol level. Any amount of cholesterol, any amount of saturated fat will increase your LDL level. So therefore, it should be 0 in the ideal situation. It's just like smoking, right? It's not good for you. You don't need to smoke cigarettes to live. Is it okay to smoke 2 cigarettes a day, 3 cigarettes a day, 5 cigarettes a day? No. You don't need to smoke to live. Smoking is not good for your health. It should be 0. And again, oils are not healthy. For those of you that are still skeptical about, I thought olive oil was healthy for you, just think about this. The most calorie-dense food, we went over that already. 1 tablespoon is 100 to 120 calories. It takes 43 olives to make 1 tablespoon of olive oil. Eat 43 olives. And how much fiber are you going to get? How many nutrients are you going to get from the olive itself? A lot. But squeezing all the fat out of olives to get olive oil is no different than squeezing all the juice out of oranges to get orange juice. And that's not good for you. Orange juice is sugar water, right? Olive oil still has 14 to 15% saturated fat. It is cheap. It's tasty. It's heavy, so industry adds it to every single food they possibly can because they sell food by the pound or by the ounce. And they don't care about your health. They just throw it in there. It's only been in the human diet for 2,000 years, oil. We've evolved over tens of millions of years. Yet it's only been in our diet for 2,000 years. We have not evolved to be able to tolerate oil consumption to any significant degree. And oil causes damage to the lining of the arteries, especially even olive oil, just published a few months ago. So it's not good for you. So no oil, 0. Now, people go back and forth and argue which is worse for you, the bad refined carbohydrates or animal-based foods. Some people say, oh, the problem with America is obesity, diabetes, and heart disease is the bad carbs. And some people say, oh, it's the animal-based foods. Well, you know what? Let's compare them. They both have no fiber. They both have high calorie density. They both spike your insulin and can lead to diabetes. But animal-based foods have dietary cholesterol and saturated fat. Animal protein itself is very acidic with a lot of sulfur-containing amino acids, which promote an acidic environment and cause lots of different issues. Heme iron causes a lot of what we call oxidative stress, damages your cells quite a bit, only in animal-based foods. TMAO, trimethylamine oxide, damages your arteries big time. It only goes up from animal-based food consumption. And nitrates and antibiotics in animal-based foods. Insulin-like growth factor 1, which I mentioned before, increases cancer growth only in animal-based foods. So if you just looked at this list, you would say, looks like animal-based foods are way worse than the bad refined carbohydrates. And I would completely agree with that statement. However, we shouldn't be consuming any of this stuff, right? It should be none. It's just like saying which one's worse, heroin or cocaine. They're both worse. Don't do either of them, right? Zero, so none. But what about moderation? I thought everything in moderation, including moderation. No, again, you shouldn't do heroin in moderation or cocaine in moderation. You shouldn't smoke in moderation. If you want moderate diabetes, moderate heart disease, moderate cancer, do things in moderation. If you want moderate weight loss, do things in moderation. If you don't want heart disease, you don't want cancer, you don't want diabetes, if you want to reach your ideal body weight, don't do unhealthy things in moderation. Now, come on, if you smoked 1 cigarette a year, would that really increase your cancer risk? Probably not. But there's no strict definition as to what moderation is. And the problem with moderation is when you're eating an unhealthy food in moderation, whatever it is, say you're 100% whole food plant-based, but once a week you have your cheat meal and you go get a burger or whatever, double bacon cheeseburger. You keep your brain addicted to that taste. You keep yourself understanding what that food is, what it tastes like, and it's a vice. Now it's like you're stuck on it still. It's just so important to get rid of it completely, 100%. And that's when you'll be free of the addiction to whatever that unhealthy food is that you're addicted to. Like I used to be. Once I finally got rid of all those donuts and all that other stuff, I feel free now. So I wanted to make sure that we talk about some of these other concepts that are out there about weight loss and different diets. Super important. Because again, your goal is not only to lose weight, get your ideal body weight, but you want to live long. You want to live well. You want to sustain your weight loss. There's no point in doing something short term. And so the big low carbohydrate ketogenic diet craze is such a big thing that's out there. It's crazy. The Atkins diet, South Beach diet, paleo diet, ketogenic diet, bulletproof diet. I mean, the list goes on and on of these different iterations of low carbohydrate diets. It's crazy. It's crazy. Because yeah, you can lose weight short term on these things, but your heart disease risk goes up, your cancer risk goes up. It's not good for you long term. No longest living culture ever consumed a diet that was similar to this. The amount of cholesterol and saturated fat you eat is astounding when you eat these types of dietary patterns. Nobody should be eating these types of diets, not at all. How Not to Die, this is the book you want to read, not those evidence-based books. So I mentioned that to you before. It's very, very popular, very, very powerful. So I wanted to show, this was just a couple days ago. The US News and World Report ranks diets every year. And the ketogenic diet comes in number 38 out of 41 ranked. So anybody who's ever heard of ketogenic diet, it ranks near dead last. And why is it? Because it is really hard to follow and it is horribly unhealthy for you. So it is not something anybody should do. Can you get weight loss short term? Yes. Short term. Short term. Did I say short term? Let me say short term. Short term weight loss through ketogenic diets, long-term failure, long-term heart disease risk, long-term cancer risk. You can lose weight if you went on a cocaine binge. You can lose weight if you smoked cigarettes. You can lose weight if you did nothing but ate potatoes for 5 years. Does that mean it's healthy for you? No, it doesn't. You don't want short term. So ketogenic diets, not a good idea. There's even plant-based ketogenic diets, not a good idea. It's not something you want to be doing. So when anybody ever says, oh, what about this diet? What about Whole30? What about paleo? What about this? What about that? Here are some of the questions you need to ask about any diet that you are thinking about trying. Is it healthy long term? The only diet has ever been shown to prevent and reverse heart disease is a 100% whole food plant-based diet. Is it sustainable long term? Like a ketogenic diet is not. Eating a potato diet or a watermelon only diet or whatever, all these other weird diets that are out there are not long-term sustainable. Juice fasting, detox things, these are not long-term things. Did it help you achieve your ideal body weight? Because if you're trying some diet, you say, oh, I'm on a Mediterranean diet, look at me, but you're still 20 pounds over your ideal body weight, it's not the right diet. It's clearly not. It has olive oil in it, too many animal-based foods, it's not right. Does this diet minimize your exposure to carcinogens, cancer-causing agents? Again, pointing back towards the low carbohydrate, high fat diets, the ketogenic type diets, where we could be consuming processed meats and red meats, which are very clear carcinogens according to the World Health Organization. And there's a lot of other dioxins and other things in the animal-based foods. You want a diet that lowers your cancer risk as well, that does not expose you to carcinogens. Well, what about pesticides and plant-based foods, right? What about that? Well, it's actually very less cancer-causing than what you might think, especially compared to animal-based foods. The amount of lives that are saved by increasing fruit and vegetable consumptions is astounding compared to the amount of potential cancer that pesticides might cause. Choose organic when you can, especially with the dirty dozen fruits and vegetables that are more pesticide-laden, like strawberries and such. But don't let organic versus non-organic be a determining factor as to how many plant-based foods you eat. Just eat plant-based foods for sure. Did the diet that you're on lower your cholesterol levels to safe levels? Everybody in this room needs to know their blood cholesterol level. It is so critically important. I'm going to show you a couple slides on that. And has this diet, whatever diet somebody's asking you about, has it been shown to prevent and reverse the world's #1 killer? 17 million people on this planet every year die from heart disease, which is 99% preventable. The only diet on more than one occasion in animal studies and in more than one occasion in human studies that has been shown to reverse heart disease is a 100% whole food plant-based diet. So ask them that question. The only diet that fits all of these is a whole food plant-based diet. That's it. So what increases your blood cholesterol levels? Dietary cholesterol, like we talked about, saturated fat, trans fat. So the ideal way to get your cholesterol level down and stop you from clogging your arteries is a whole food plant-based diet. So here's an important slide, because again, you want to lose weight in a healthy, long-term, sustainable way and prevent yourself from clogging up. This shows the risk of you having a heart attack, the cumulative risk of a heart attack over your lifetime. This is age on this scale here, your risk of having a heart attack. When you're young, when you're under the age of 40, if your LDL cholesterol is only 125, your risk is like 0. You know, you never see a 10-year-old having a heart attack. That doesn't happen, right? But the longer that your LDL cholesterol is high over the years, the more cholesterol plaque builds up over time, and the higher your risk is. So this graph shows somebody whose average LDL cholesterol is 125. Why was that number chosen? Because that's the average LDL cholesterol of the American public, 125. Mine was as high as 132 at one point before I lost the weight. So if your average LDL cholesterol is 125, by the age of 40, if you added up 125 times 40 years, you get this number, this cumulative exposure to LDL. So 125 times 40 years, you get 5,000, a score of 5,000. Your risk of a heart attack at the age of 40 is 1% already. So if the average American, if their LDL was 125, by the age of 40 is a 1% risk of you already having had a heart attack. And if your LDL is higher than that, it's going to be even higher than 1%. Or as you get older, by the age of 60 now, you're at 4%. By the age of 80, 16% of 80-year-olds, 16%, who have an LDL of 125, which doesn't even sound that bad to many people, will have had a heart attack already. So from as young of an age as possible, you want your LDL to be as low as possible. How low do you want it to be? Well, a physiologically normal LDL cholesterol is between 50 and 70. Between 50 and 70. So if whatever diet you're on is not lowering your cholesterol number to an LDL of under 70, you need to change it. Whole food plant-based, great, but what if oil is sneaking in there? What if you have too many nuts and seeds, avocado and coconut, too much saturated fat? Dr. Esselstyn's plan, which is the strictest plan in the world ever, is not only whole food plant-based, no oil, but no nuts, seeds, avocado, coconut, soy, avocado, nothing that has any fat in it whatsoever. Anecdotally, I'm just one person. But when I lost weight and went on a whole food plant-based diet, my LDL dropped to 68 from 132. Then I decided I'm going to try this whole Esselstyn thing because I had lots of nuts and seeds, and I'm sure the oil snuck in there just a teeny bit every once in a while, not much. But I said I'm going to get rid of the avocado, the coconut, I'm going to cut out all the soy, and I'm going to cut out all nuts and seeds and see what happens to my LDL. And I dropped it from 68 down to 60. It's like, okay, that was a lot of changes to get from 68 to 60, but it did lower it further. My total was 126. And so you want your total under 150 and your LDL between 50 and 70. That's what normal really is. And so when you look at healthy neonates, when you look at primates, monkeys out in nature, their LDLs are between 40 and 80. Monkeys in nature never clog their arteries ever. Heart disease, atherosclerosis does not exist in nature for primates, for monkeys and gorillas and chimpanzees. It doesn't exist because they're eating their natural whole food plant-based diet, which their body was designed for. Now, when you look at somebody to try to prevent heart disease, these dots each represent a major clinical trial with thousands of people. And here's the heart attack risk. If you want a zero heart attack risk, where is your LDL cholesterol? If you draw a line through all these dots, 55. What if you've already had a heart attack or a stroke? So these are all clinical trials of patients that have already had heart attacks or strokes or aneurysms or bypass surgeries. Where do you want your LDL level to be if you want to get to a zero risk once you've already clogged up? 30. That sounds crazy low to many people, but that's what the data shows. Yet, despite low risk accompanying low LDL levels, which they say less than 100, but again, should be way lower than that, the intensity of clinical intervention required to achieve such low LDL levels for everyone would financially overload the healthcare system, and drug use would rise enormously. That is the statement from the National Institute of Health. That if we really told everybody that their LDL should be that low, everybody's going to be on pills. Well, they're assuming that the only way to lower your LDL cholesterol is with pills. But with whole food plant-based diets, no cholesterol, no saturated fat, staying at your ideal body weight, you can achieve that. A vast majority of people can achieve that. So Dr. Esselstyn, who is a famous heart surgeon, or a general surgeon at Cleveland Clinic, who's reversed heart disease and published a lot of data, he says that the reason given for not advocating for lower levels of LDL was it might frustrate the public, who would have a difficult time maintaining a lower cholesterol level. It seems to him that the public's greatest frustration would actually come from not being informed on the optimal diet for health. We need to tell America the truth, not what they want to hear, not what we think they can handle, but the truth. And the truth is your LDL needs to be under 70 from as young of an age as you could possibly get it. Not through drugs, but through diet and lifestyle, which requires whole food, plant-based for a vast majority of people. So USDA dietary guidelines will say fruits and vegetables, grains, and proteins. They leave animal proteins in there and 3 servings of dairy. The American College of Lifestyle Medicine says fruits, vegetables, legumes for your protein source. So beans, there's 100 different types of beans and lentils, and whole grains only. Versus over here, these grains, they allow half of them to be refined on the USDA dietary guidelines. And drink only water, no dairy. This is what we should recommend. A whole food plant-based diet. Eat the whole food, eat the orange, no orange juice, eat the olive, no olive oil. And it's so important for you to distinguish this from what we call a vegan diet, which I'll get to. But people are thinking, everybody's thinking, what about the protein? Where do you get your protein? Well, where does the cow get the protein from? Where does the pig, where does the chicken get the protein from? They get it from eating plants, right? So if you look at eating just brown rice and broccoli, if you ate 2,000 calories, you're going to get 80 grams of protein. These aren't even high protein plant-based foods. These are medium protein plant-based foods. If you just eat enough calories, you get plenty. How much protein does a female need? 45 grams. That's 80 right there. How many grams of protein does a male need? 55. Again, that's 80. You will get plenty of protein if you eat a whole food plant-based diet as long as you're consuming adequate calories. The only thing that's lacking in a whole food plant-based diet is B12, because B12 comes from bacteria. Animal-based foods are very dirty and bacteria-laden. And so we wash our vegetables and we don't eat the soil. We don't pull them out of the ground and chew on the carrot right away. We wash it all off so we don't get B12 in our natural environment any longer. 1 cup of pond water has 200% of your B12 for the day, but I don't recommend going and drinking from a pond. You can check your levels, and if you have to take supplements or use B12 fortified foods, go for it. But you get all the protein you need, as indicated by these guys who eat predominantly or exclusively plant-based diets. Tom Brady, who has his own Whole Foods plant-based meal delivery service through Purple Carrot. Aaron Rodgers, football quarterback, who eats 98% plant-based, was a big deal when he ditched dairy in Wisconsin. Kyrie Irving, top basketball player in the NBA. This guy's name is Patrick Baboumian. He could bench press 750 pounds. He broke the Guinness Book of World Record, carrying 1,250 pounds on his back, doing something called the yoke walk. 100% plant-based. There's a whole bunch of vegan bodybuilders out there, whole food plant-based bodybuilders. Venus and Serena Williams, Nikola Djokovic, who won the Wimbledon recently, tennis player. This dude, Rich Roll, is an inspiration. You should hear this guy speak. He lost a lot of weight on a whole food plant-based diet and became an ultra runner and did 5 Ironman triathlons in 5 days. That is a 2.4 mile swim, a 112 mile bike, and a full 26 mile run, full marathon after that. 5 of them in a row in 5 days, 100% plant-based. Where does he get his protein from? From plants. And Scott Jurek broke the Guinness Book of World Records running the Appalachian Trail, which is 2,200 miles in 46 days. That's more than 2 marathons a day, 46 days in a row, up and down mountains. That is crazy. 100% fueled, whole food, plant-based. So athletes are doing it like crazy. But this is not what we call a vegan diet. So the term vegan is thrown out there here and there all over the place. A vegan diet tells me what somebody doesn't eat. That means they don't eat animal-based foods, and a lot of people eat a vegan diet for ethical reasons. They don't want to harm animals, they want to help the environment, which is wonderful. However, we as humans, we're animals too. And we don't want to harm our own bodies by eating unhealthy vegan food. So a vegan diet, a vegan who does it for animal reasons only, they might eat nothing but Oreo cookies, Doritos, drink soda, French fries, and eat this burger, which is called the Impossible Burger, which you can't tell the difference. Actually, a lot of people think it tastes better than a beef burger, but it's not. It's made out of soy, and it has soy heme, and it bleeds, and everything. It's crazy how it's like that. Now, this is not healthy for you. It's full of coconut oil, processed stuff. Is this something that somebody on a whole food plant-based diet might have once a year on 4th of July? Maybe, but it's got to be extraordinarily uncommon because, again, it'll get you addicted back to unhealthy foods and such. But at least there's no dietary cholesterol in there, but it's high in saturated fat and other ingredients. So we don't recommend that. So what are you left with? You're left with different burgers, and you could have pancakes and waffles and curries and pastas and pizzas and soups and stews, and everything that you ever eat on a standard American diet can be made whole food, plant-based. So there's so much great food that you can't eat. It's unlimited. So again, people still are like, what about this? What about that? This nutrient, that nutrient. Well, if you wanted to dispel all myths about what nutrients you can get on a 100% plant-based diet, here it is right here. The position statement of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the largest nutrition academy in the world, says straight out that a 100% plant-based diet is healthful and nutritionally adequate and appropriate for all stages of life, including pregnancy, lactation, infancy, childhood, adolescence, older adulthood, and for athletes. I have 6 kids, all 100% plant-based. My last 2 babies were born with my wife being 100% plant-based. The baby never took any formula or any dairy, no cow's milk, no bottled even at all. We don't feed them plant-based milk. Second they're weaned from the mother, they go straight to eating real food. We are not cows, we don't need to keep drinking milk, right? And not only that, but plant-based diets are more environmentally sustainable than diets rich in animal products. They're associated with less environmental damage because the #1 cause of climate change is animal agriculture. 70 billion land animals do a lot of pooping and farting and burping and release a lot of gases, and they use a lot of resources. So good for the environment as well. Now, one quick note on Mediterranean diets, because the Mediterranean diet was ranked #1 by the U.S. News and World Report recently in the healthiest diet. The reason this is there is a lot of data, a lot of research on Mediterranean diets comparing it to standard diets. Randomized controlled trials are considered what we call the gold standard of research in medicine. There's a lot of randomized controlled trials in Mediterranean diets funded by the nut industry, the olive oil industry, and such. And it showed superiority over standard American diets. However, one of the big trials called the PREDIMED study did not reduce heart attack risk or cardiovascular disease. People still had heart attacks or strokes, unlike the Ornish studies and the Esselstyn studies where the rates were essentially 0 for heart attack, stroke, and death, hence the term heart attack proof if you went on Esselstyn's plan. So is this better than the standard American diet? Absolutely it is. Is there a percentage of people that can live on this long term and not develop heart disease and stroke? Yeah, there's a percentage of people. I don't know if that's 10% or 20%. but it's not a high percentage. So this Mediterranean diet, by the way, is a 90% plant-based diet. So it is extremely heavy in plant-based things, but it does include some poultry, some cheeses, and olive oil in there. It is not the ideal diet. It is healthier than what most Americans eat, no question about it. But it is not the ideal diet for health. It's clearly not. So the reason that a lot of doctors don't recommend whole food plant-based diets is there's multiple reasons, but not only our own cultural preconditioning that you have to eat meats or animal products, which we know is not true, and the randomized controlled trials of Mediterranean diets are strong, and they don't have those similar trials for whole food plant-based diets, despite the heart disease trials, the Ornish and the Esselstyn trials. Those are great. Those are powerful for heart disease patients. But what about people without heart disease? Well, if it can reverse heart disease, you would think it's going to prevent it too, right? If that's the only thing a plant-based diet can do, a whole food plant-based diet, is reverse the world's #1 killer. Shouldn't that be the recommended diet until you show me some other diet that can also reverse heart disease? It really should be. And so really, this is better than most people, but a whole food plant-based diet is ideal. The only diet that can reverse heart disease, open up an artery without a stent, without a bypass surgery, fix a perfusion abnormality, a blood flow problem, is a whole food plant-based diet. All right, we talked a lot about diet. We're wrapping things up here. Everybody's thinking weight loss. Wait, what about exercise? He hasn't said anything about exercise yet. Well, exercise is nowhere near as important as diet, honestly. Did these guys get on a treadmill? These blue zones, the longest living cultures in the world, they didn't go swim in a pool, they didn't go run, they didn't bike. They were just constantly physically active. Constant physical activity is what the blue zones did. And of course, they had a sense of family, they didn't smoke, they had social engagement, they ate a lot of legumes, and they ate a plant-based diet. But these guys didn't go to the gym and work up a sweat, right? So 1 pound of body weight is 3,500 calories. So that means when you walk 1 mile, you burn about 100 calories. And it varies a little bit based on how fast you're walking and your weight and such. So that means you have to walk about 35 miles to lose 1 pound. Okay, fine. I did have a patient once. He woke up in the morning, brushed his teeth, got dressed, walked 3 miles. Took about an hour. Went to work, did his thing, had dinner, walked 3 more miles. He was walking 6 miles a day. 7 days a week, that's about 42 miles a week. He'll lose just more than a pound a week by walking 2 hours a day. Yeah, you can lose weight, but that's a lot of exercise and a lot of time commitment. So because of that, when you ask all these experts, these fitness people, they admit straight out, diet is 80% of weight loss. Exercise is 20%. Yes, stay physically active. If you want to go to the gym, great. I encourage people to exercise. There's a lot of research that shows that the standard American probably has high blood cholesterol levels, is overweight, is the beginning of diabetes. If they exercise, they're going to reduce the risk of heart attack and stroke and cancer and all that stuff. That's great. However, that data doesn't exist for people who already eat plant-based because they're probably already at their ideal body weight, their cholesterol levels are low. How much benefit does exercise really get? Well, those blue zones, again, were eating plant-based and they didn't go to the gym. They were just constantly physically active. So if you're following a whole food plant-based, no oil diet and approaching your ideal body weight, just walk, stay active constantly. You don't necessarily need to go run a marathon like crazy me did. Just stay physically active and walk. If you want to exercise, that's great. For those people who do want to exercise, here are some tips. Again, you can never out-exercise an unhealthy diet. You can't. So I signed up for many marathons and runs and stuff, and it still blows my mind away that I see overweight people, even obese people, doing marathons and such. They complete a marathon, yet they're still overweight or obese. It's clear that they don't consume a healthy diet, despite that much physical activity. You can never out-exercise an unhealthy diet unless you're this guy. Ryan Lochte, Olympic swimmer, you ever see this dude? He puts down a 10,000 calorie lunch, and that's what he looks like. He is an elite athlete that is burning so much. His basal metabolic rate is so crazy high from all the exercise he does. Okay, fine. He can out-exercise his diet. However, when you look at what he's eating, a cheesy type, I don't know what that is, macaroni, cheese, chicken, he's got some asparagus in there, hey, that's something, but what kind of oily sauce is on there? What is this dude's blood cholesterol level? I'd love to know. With the amount of cholesterol he's consuming, it's got to be pretty crazy high. So even though you can eat unhealthy, look good on the outside if you're physically active and stuff, what's going on the inside? So you can never out-exercise an unhealthy diet. Number 2, Gradually ease yourself into exercise. Too many people, New Year's Day comes up, they join the gym, they work hard for 2 weeks or a month, and they burn out. They may injure themselves, they mentally burn out, they can't handle it anymore. You need to gradually ease your way in. When I was 265 pounds and I was going to start training for a marathon, I started with walking. I walked a half a mile, then I walked a mile. Then I was able to slowly, every week, increase it by 10%, and then I walked a little bit, jogged a little bit, walked a little bit, and slowly worked my way up. 10% rule is don't increase week by week your physical activity by any more than 10%. So if you walk a mile a day, every day this week, next week don't walk any more than 1.1 miles per day. Then the following week go up to 1.2 miles per day, and the next week 1.3 miles. It has to be gradual. Super important so that your body can adapt to the physical activity level, so you don't mentally burn yourself out, so you don't physically burn yourself out. And you must love your physical activity. You must love it. If you don't love what you're doing, the biking, the swimming, the treadmill, the elliptical, whatever the heck it is, you're not going to do it long term. And there's no point in exercising for a month. There's no point. You need to stay active for the rest of your life. Join fitness groups, have a, whatever, make a habit. Every morning you wake up and when you're watching the morning show, you're walking on the treadmill. Whatever it is that you like to do, you must absolutely focus on loving the type of exercise that you do. So the last tip is you need to learn how to play the guitar. What? Well, what I like to say is, this is a lot of information, a lot of stuff for people who are overweight, obese, and it seems like it's a daunting task. The analogy I like to say to people is changing your diet and your lifestyle to promote long-term good health is no different than learning how to play an instrument such as a guitar. No different. So if I had somebody who just had a heart attack and I said, listen, you're going to die in the next 10 years if you don't learn how to play the guitar. They're going to look at me and say, okay, I'm going to go get a guitar. I'm going to learn how to play this. I'm going to really work hard at this. But guess what? You can't just read one book or watch one video and be a good guitar player. It doesn't work that way. Just like with your diet and lifestyle, you can't just watch the documentary Forks Over Knives and boom, I'm on a healthy lifestyle. You can't just come to one lecture by some crazy cardiologist and boom, now you're on a healthy diet and lifestyle. It doesn't work that way. To learn how to play the guitar well, you need to practice it every day. And you're going to be horrible at first. You're going to sound bad. You need to read about it. You need to get books. You need to take lessons. You need a group support such as a band that you play with. And if you keep working at it after 1, 2, or 3 years, you can learn the skill of how to play a guitar well. Well, same with your diet. You need to work at it, read about it, read How Not to Die, watch these documentaries. You need to practice it every day. And if you really work at it, after 1, 2, or 3 years, you'll say, I've mastered the skill of a healthy lifestyle, eating plant-based, staying physically active. Now, granted, some people can change real fast. They're highly motivated. Maybe they just had a heart attack. They have a health condition. They must change fast. That's great. Sure, go to your house. Take all the processed foods in the garbage, all the animal-based foods in the garbage. Go to the store, buy the whole plant foods and say, now I'm stuck. All I have is whole plant foods in my house. And here I go. Create the environment at home that allows you to eat healthy. Make sure there's always fruit on the table, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not candy bars or potato chips or whatever. Yeah, some people can do that. But most people, you need to really work at it slowly, and you will learn that skill eventually of a healthy lifestyle after 1, 2, or 3 years. Even me, I'm learning more things every day. I'm learning new different foods and new different ways to help myself eat an even healthier diet. But what I warn you is not to let somebody else play the guitar for you. What I mean by that is all these gimmicks that are out there. Weight loss pills are not a long-term solution. Fad diets are not a long-term solution. And buying food from some company, Jenny Craig, Nutrisystems, whatever it is, saying if you eat only this food, you're going to lose weight. Eat only this food. That teaches you no skill of a healthy lifestyle. That's no different than if Jenny Craig was sitting next to you and she was playing the guitar and you're listening to the music and you say, hey, Jenny, you're a great guitar player. This is great. I've been listening to you for a year now. I've lost all this weight. I feel good. I'm done with you, Jenny, because I'm not going to do you for the rest of my life. You're expensive. The food's not all that great anyways. And I'm done. So Jenny Craig says, okay, here's your guitar, and hands it to you. You've just been listening. You have no clue how to play that thing. You gain all the weight back. You go back to your unhealthy habits. What was the point of that exercise? There was no point. You must learn the skill yourself. of how to play the guitar. Don't go for any fad, weight loss pill, or any gimmick. Learn it for long-term health. Learn how to play the guitar. So, to summarize everything we said, which is a lot of stuff, obviously the state of health and healthcare in the United States is dismal. We need to understand those basic weight loss concepts, but don't count calories. Focus on whole unprocessed plant-based foods, avoiding oil, and you'll be fine. Avoid any processed foods. Moderation doesn't work. Moderation kills, right? That is the chapter 8, I think, in Dr. Esselson's book. It's called Moderation Kills. Avoid any fad diet, weight loss pill, or any gimmick. Learn the skill of a healthy lifestyle. Get support. You must do it together with other people. Don't focus on exercise for weight loss. Yes, it's good to be active, stay active, but exercise is not the key. Constantly remind yourself why you want to be healthy. Why is it that you want to live? What's your goal? Why are you trying to prevent yourself from having a heart attack or a stroke? Why are you trying to lose weight? Remind yourself of the positives all the time. Create those healthy habits. Don't let slip-ups stop you, because things are going to happen. You're going to be in a situation where you're over hungry, and oh my gosh, you had a piece of pizza, or you had that donut, whatever. Don't let that stop you. Get right back on track. And remember, it's not your fault if you're overweight or obese, if you have a chronic disease. It's the fault of our messed up system. So be the change though, because the one thing that you know is that you can prevent heart disease, reverse it, diabetes, hypertension, even though you may not be a physician, a nurse, a healthcare provider. Just through what you learned here, you guys have the power to save other people's lives by spreading the good word about a healthy lifestyle, about a plant-based lifestyle. You need to actively be the change, because the food system's not going to change. The healthcare system is not going to change. Our government's not going to step up and change policies unless the people demand the change. So more and more people are going to suffer from these preventable diseases unless we as a culture, as a society, steps up and does something about it. So we need to be the change. First, take care of yourself. They always say put the